have a few folks that are joining in, so I will pause for just a moment before we get started. It takes a minute sometimes for folks to get connected to audio. But thank you all so much for being here. Hello, welcome. I see the numbers still jumping up, so I'm just going to pause here while people continue to join. Yeah, I love to see in the chat where folks are joining from or what college they're attending. Oh, I see some UMD folks. Oh, it's moving so fast. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh my gosh, this is moving so fast. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm seeing the attendee numbers start to slow down as they tick up, so we will get started here in just a moment once I see them kind of stop moving. I like to just make sure everyone is joined and able to hear me. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Awesome. Awesome. So I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome to everyone. Welcome again to everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I love seeing the chat getting super warmed up as folks share where they're joining us from or what school they attend. That is so fun to see. We so appreciate you being here with us here today. We are excited to share a little bit more about our Capital One internships and introduce you to some former interns who are going to chat through their experience with their internships at Capital One. Before we do, though, I want to introduce a couple of folks on the call that you may see or hear from throughout the call. One of them being myself. My name is Claire. I am an event lead here with Capital One. And so what that means is that I spend my time each day hosting events similar to this on campus, on some campuses, and also virtually to help students learn more about the opportunities we have at Capital One. Joining me today is also my colleague, Denise. She is my teammate in these virtual events. So you may see Denise at various times throughout the presentation. She's managed the screen share and may at various times engage in the chat. So thank you so much for being here, Denise. Also joining me today, I have a recruiter who is on my team. His name is Alex. I'm going to pass to Alex to introduce yourself.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Alex Reed. This is my second season with Capital One. I am working as the analyst development and internship recruiter for the East Coast. So if there's any questions you have about the internship process, the development process, or any of the interviews between, I'm happy to help there.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. A few of our other friends are going to have a chance to introduce themselves in a few minutes. But before they do, I wanted to go ahead and introduce, share a little bit more about Capital One. I want to share that this overview that I'm about to do is very brief and high level because I want to jump right into the internships. But I wanted to give just a little bit of an introduction to get everyone sort of at a base level of knowledge about Capital One. So if we can move ahead 2 slides, I think, Denise. Awesome. So I think like I sort of love this slide as a place to start because I think as a Capital One associate, it's important to start really any conversation trying to give an insider's peek at what it's like to work at Capital One. I hope we'll get more of an insider's peek throughout this presentation as we meet former interns. But I do like to kick us off by sharing a little bit about the culture and experience of working here. While Capital One is truly doing the work of revolutionizing banking and beyond for our customers, as associates, we can really feel that momentum internally in the experience that we have working here as well. So from career-minded growth, networking and learning opportunities to our innovative and tech-forward working environment with collaborative and supportive teams, sort of all of that comes together and fosters a culture where we can live our best lives at home and at work. And I truly feel that. I know it sounds so silly, but I really do feel like Capital One does a great job of building a culture and a working environment where we can be our best selves and thrive. On the next slide, we'll share a little bit more about the background of Capital One. So we were founded in 1994. The company is still run actually by our founder and current CEO. His name is Rich Fairbank. If you think about financial services companies, many of them, especially those like in the top 10 bank area, have been around much longer. I saw a news article recently that was talking about Capital One that said almost all of the other top 10 banks, maybe all of the other top 10 banks were around in the time when our founding fathers were still alive. So our founding fathers could have been customers of those banks. And that, I think, just goes to show sort of how young we are as a company, and why it feels a little different than other banks working here, and why we can be so innovative. We've always had to be, I think. And so because, many of the other financial service companies are so much older, they are no longer run by their founders, of course, which is another reason, of course, why Capital One is so unique. And Rich being our CEO, it makes operating our values and mission that much stronger. I love this slide also because you can see that we have offices across the US. You see all of those locations at the top of this slide. That's not all of our locations, but those are our larger people center locations where we have sort of bigger offices, and which may be relevant for the audience here today. So if we skip ahead 2 more slides, in this I'm going to share a little bit more about specifically the programs that we recruit for folks, internships and full-time programs that we recruit for folks, students and grads. So obviously, we believe that we win in the marketplace in the way that we do banking a little bit differently, how we're trying to change banking and present, tech-forward banking solutions. But another way we win in the marketplace is through our student and grads programs. I know that's sort of what most of you are all here to learn about. Students can start their careers here at Capital One through many different programs, ranging from internships to full-time programs and even programs for grad students. We will today be specifically focusing on the analyst internship, analyst development, the analyst internship and tech internship program. So we have a recruiter here representing analysts and some former interns here representing those programs. So we'll be specifically focused in those, but I did think it was important to sort of show all of the programs. And you'll learn a little bit more about how those internships can sometimes feed into the full-time program. You'll learn a little bit more about that shortly as well. So if we go to the next slide, we have a little bit of like an overview of what are the foundational components of our students and grads programs. So each of our students and grad programs at Capital One are very focused on ensuring that they provide resources, opportunities, and connection that truly offer their associates a jump start on their career and growth and learning personally within Capital One. So this includes sort of these 4 foundational components. High impact roles. I think it's really important to call that out specifically because our interns and rotational associates aren't just like getting coffee or supporting and doing back work. They are truly responsible for work that actually drives the engine of the services that we offer for our customers and associates. So much so that in our year-end results, that when we hear, or not our year-end, but we have a yearly meeting where we hear about the progress we're making, very often when our CEO is presenting like progress we've made or impacts that we've made, he presents a project that was done by an intern or one of our rotational associates. So the work that they're doing is so foundational and important that at times it's even reaching those higher levels and making an impact there, which I think is just so cool. All programs include a training period, but the training, of course, does not end there. There is continuous training throughout the programs as you grow, and it will help you to continue to upskill yourself and stay relevant within the programs and within your roles. Mentorship is also an important part of our internship programs. You will find yourself with a wealth of mentors through the program, both official. You'll have officially assigned mentors by program leads and team leads. But you will also find that you will find and connect individually through the extensive exposure this program offers associates to exposure to leaders and other folks throughout Capital One. So there's official and unofficial ways to gain mentorship, and it's such an important part of our overall community at Capital One, but also of our internship programs. And then the last little piece, which I think is sort of similar but different and important to call out, is the community of the programs. Each internship program onboards a group of folks at the same time. So you're all going through the same or very similar transitions. So it's just a community of built-in teammates, and many chances are built in throughout internship, but also throughout your experience at Capital One to stay connected with that cohort of folks and folks who are sort of in the same place as you. So those are the 4 sort of foundational components which sort of make up the backbone of our programs. On the next slide, I will talk a little bit more specifically about the internship. So our internships at Capital One are 10-week programs. We already sort of mentioned some of these details when I was going over the previous slide. They are created and to focus on students with excellent academic credentials. Folks who apply for and get these internships also often have impactful engagement within their school or broader community. So volunteerism or leadership roles, sometimes student athletes. In particular for our analyst programs, but for many of the programs as well, all majors are welcome. The tech programs do, so the tech internship does have some specific majors, but students should have an interest in leveraging data to drive novel insights that shape our business, or an invested interest in the technologies that we service. For all entry-level programs, which would include our internship, candidates should not require an H-1B visa sponsorship now or at any point in the future. So for our internship and undergraduate programs, we currently do not sponsor. There are some of our MBA or master's or data science programs like PhD where we may offer sponsorship, but at this time we do not sponsor for our internship programs. So now I am going to pass to, if we want to skip to the next slide, I will pass to Charlie and ask Charlie to introduce himself.
Yeah, hello. Hi, I'm Charlie. I was a former intern as well as a former TDP, which is the technical development program. That's kind of like the first rotational program for new hires. A little bit about me. I'm from Clearwater, Florida. I was originally, I started as a February 2021 TDP, and then I had 2 previous internships, one in 2020, one in 2019. I also graduated from the University of Florida, so if there's any Gators out there, and yeah, I graduated with a bachelor's in computer science engineering. Things that I do at Capital One, yeah, so I work in the travel portal, specifically travel messaging, which is a really cool area. I participate in Coders, which is Capital One's volunteering. It's a volunteering program that helps kids how to learn HTML, like how to build a website. There's also a couple other ones. I think they can build an app. There's a couple different places that we can teach them. And then I also am a part of the campus recruiting. I don't know if anyone went to any of the UF events in the spring, but I was the campus ambassador that was over there during the C1 takeover. And then I also participate in Outfront, and that is our LGBTQ plus resource group that is basically a community of associates that we talk about different LGBT issues, as well as they host a bunch of events and community coffees and all that. So really fun org to be a part of. And then things I do outside of Capital One, I do ceramics. I currently work in the studio. Oh yeah, I'm in Boston, by the way. My location for work is in Boston. So I work in a studio in Somerville. You can see some of my most recent bisque pieces that I've done in the past week. I also am really into biking. That's my Bassie Bloomfield in the corner. If anyone's a bike fan, I love it. It's a great bike. And I also do some gardening. You could see, I'm blanking on the name of the flower. I think it's marigold, or I forget. If anyone knows, let me know. But I also love the garden. You can also see my basil plant in the back there. I've been trying to grow some stuff this summer, so we'll see how it goes. And yeah, the next slide, I'm just going to go into like a day in a life on one of my internships. I've done 2. So my first internship was actually working in the machine learning area. So this was before we had specific internships for like cyber, for machine learning. So I was originally doing a Python. I was writing a Python Louvain algorithm kind of as a part of this library that we were going to use as an enterprise tool for other teams to utilize. And then my second internship was working on a cloud monitoring system that would kind of analyze different resources to make sure that they were compliant or not. But yeah, so day in life with me, I think my day usually starts at 9 a.m. I like taking a good 30 minutes just to have some me time. I don't like opening Slack first thing in the morning, it really overwhelms me. So I usually write down what I want to do for the day. I just check on some emails. I identify some topics that I need to discuss with my team, kind of just a nice little warm up. And then I have my team check-ins at 9:30. That's when I will turn on Slack finally. Um, and yeah, we'll have a morning stand-up followed by our what we call core hours, which is basically just a time where my developers and I can kind of just swarm on specific coding issues that we may have for that day. And once that check-in's over, that's the time for work, that's where the bulk of my work gets done. I work on tasks that are assigned for my sprint. I approve PRs for my other team members if they're working on other stuff, and I also respond to those Slack messages I've been ignoring in the morning. So once I'm all done with that work, I will then head out to lunch. I remember when I was in Richmond for my first internship, they had a daily one night ultimate werewolf meeting right before lunch that I thought was always really fun. I always attended just one round just to blow off some steam. And then the picture actually, that is a group of some interns and we decided to go Chick-fil-A because it was dressed as a cow day. So we decided to go out of campus just to go get some Chick-fil-A, and since it was free. So and then yeah, after lunch, I usually take an hour for lunch, and around 1 I get back to the grind. I'll attend some of my agile meetings. So I'll have some refinement meetings where we kind of build out work that we want to work on in the future. We attend retro meetings, which is kind of looking at our past work and seeing what we could do better. And yeah, depending on the week, we do either or just to discuss like our sprint work. And yeah, most of that block is now me working on my stories, trying to just finish out my code, get stuff tested. At the end of every sprint, we usually have a demo, so I'm probably preparing for that depending on the day, which we just kind of showcase what we've been working on the past 2 weeks. And then at 3, I usually had like a volunteering event. I know I participated in Coders even as an intern, which was really fun. It was great. I got to meet a bunch of like kids that wanted to learn how to like build an Android app, and they're all like in 5th grade, and they were very adorable and they had a lot of fun. So that was always like a good feeling at the end of the day, just having some kids learn some new knowledge, which is great. And then the 5 to 9 after the 9 to 5. Yeah, the workday is not complete without hanging out with your interns. I will say, like, when I was in Richmond, there was such a tight-knit group of interns. We always like had our little subgroups after work. So I was in the rock climbing group. I know, rock climbing computer scientists. I'm aware of this the stigma, but it was honestly really fun. But yeah, we go to the rock climbing gym, but then sometimes we'd mix it up by going to the breweries because they had a lot of like trivia nights. And yeah, and if not, we just hang out in the apartment complex because there was like a really nice area that they had for us where we just kind of hang out and just talk about it, our day and stuff. But yeah, this is a pretty typical day of what I had as an intern. And I will say it has a good mix of fun and work. So what more can you ask for? But yeah, I'm gonna pass it off to Shira now.
Awesome. Can we go to the next slide? Cool. So I'm Shira. Just like Charlie, I was a former intern, and I'm currently in the Early Development Program, also known as the Tech Development Program, or TDP. I'm from Redmond, Washington. So if there's anyone out from Washington here. So yeah, just like I said, I'm currently in the beginner or the entry level role, the TDP, and I was also an intern. And I was an intern at a different company, and I'll kind of go over why I ended up sticking out here. Besides that, I'm from Washington State University, so if there's any Cougs out there, go Cougs. I got my bachelor's of science in computer science from there, along with a minor in math and psychology. Some of the things that I do at Capital One is I am the Coders site lead for Boston. I'm in the Boston office. Along with a mentor, I really love connecting with kids and also putting on these events so that more people can volunteer and help make websites and teach, again, middle school and elementary students how to code. So that's kind of what Coders is. I'm also on the board of Women in Tech. We put on really, really cool events. So that's fun. And then also I'm part of hackathons at Capital One. And what I do is Capital One sponsors some college hackathons, and I get to go out there and be one of the sponsors, kind of talk about some of our programs like I'm doing out here. And then I also get to do some judging and mentoring there. So yeah. Besides that, I am absolutely in love with hiking. Anything outdoors, I'm there. So I have some hiking, backpacking stuff on there. I'm also a huge card games fan. I have way too many versions of Uno, and all that. And then last but not least, I'm always planning my next travel, whether that's going to another state, going to another country. I'm always out and about and love to get out of the house. Awesome. So can we get to the next slide? Cool. So I'm a huge let's wake up early, get the day started by working out. My workouts have kind of changed, but right now we're on the running grind. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then when I was an intern in Virginia, what I did was I just took the metro because I was in corporate housing, which was awesome because it felt kind of like college, but while you were working. So it was extremely chill. There were no exams or anything. But I kind of rode with some of my buddies. I also ran with some of my buddies in the morning. So it was really, really cool to have that opportunity. Then between 9:30 and 10:30, sometimes 9, I just kind of open up Slack, which is kind of our way of communicating to one another. And then I'd look through all my emails. That'd be my time to just kind of check all the messages that I might have missed, and then kind of make a plan for what I want to do that day. Then I'd have stand up at 10:30, which stand up, for those of you who don't know, is a way to kind of talk to your teammates, see what everyone's kind of doing, if anyone needs any help. It's kind of just a check-in point. Besides that, I worked on sprints, which are periods of time in which you're doing a specific task. So, or working on a specific part of the project. So my team did it in kind of 3-week intervals because again, we were interns and the program was 10 weeks long. So we had 3-week program sections or sprints. And what we did was every 3 weeks, we'd go into this thing called refinement, which we would look at what we planned out for the sprint and then kind of change accordingly. And then we had some other just check-in sessions, see what we're going on. And in that period between 11 to 12, so right after that team check-in, what I essentially did was anything I needed to work on. And then just like Charlie said, I had lunch for about an hour. I got to hang out with some intern friends, TIP. Sometimes I'd have team lunches. Sometimes I would just like try new foods. Again, I was in our headquarters, so there was a lot of kind of cool food options in the cafeteria, and they change it up pretty often. And then between 1 and 3, for the most part, I worked on whatever I had on the sprint. So it was the project that I worked on when I was an intern. I'm not sure if y'all have heard of this, but I worked on Capital One lounges. I was a full stack engineer, so I made all the cool buttons and information, and I worked on that website. So if y'all happen to go to the travel portal, I did work on some of that as an intern, which is really cool because it's something that customers could see. And I was able to do that in my little intern team. Another thing that I do want to touch base on is in my previous internship, it was just kind of me with some other developers. And in my Capital One internship, I was able to be in a small group of other interns along with some full-timers, which were able to just help make the project that much cooler, and everyone was kind of doing the same thing. That's kind of why I stuck with Capital One. And then besides that, just like Charlie said, around 3 to 5, I volunteered, whether that was going to a place or just helping middle schoolers code. It kind of varied depending on the volunteer opportunity. And after work, like I said, I'm a huge outdoorsy person, love exploring, and I have never really been on the East Coast up until then. So I just kind of looked all over DC, Maryland, Virginia, went hiking there, everything. Cool. So that's a little bit about me. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and I can get to y'all. And with that, I'm going to move it on to Jeffrey.
Hey y'all, I'm Jeffrey. A little bit about me. I'm from Westford, Massachusetts. I was in the TDP program, same as all of our other panelists, in August of 2020, and I was a former intern in the Richmond office in the summer of 2019, as a rising senior at that time. I graduated from Cornell University with a Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science and an MEng in Computer Science as well. So things I do at Capital One, I'm a backend engineer primarily. I have touched a little bit of front end in my time, but not too much for the most part. I also do recruiting and interviewing for technical interviews. I joined Coders as well. I believe Shira touched on this, and I am a facilitator for that. And I also function as an alumni mentor for the TDPs coming in, since I am a part of the alumni now after graduating from the rotational program. So things I like to do outside of C1, just traveling, getting food whenever I can, videos and board games, and then also watching anime every now and then. To the right, you'll see some pictures I have, one from skiing, one from traveling, and then also that group photo is from a group of TDPs and alumni from the office. And that was ice skating at a rink close to our office. This was actually last winter, I believe. And yeah, towards the left, you'll see I was part of the TDP. I'm actually based out of the Boston office currently, but I've actually been officially part of 3 different locations as part of my stint at Capital One. And I think it's been about like 3.5 years since I joined full time. Yeah, that is about the time frame. But yeah, I can move on to the next slide. So this is I had to think back a little bit back to 2019 because this is like a representation of my internship day in the life. My schedule nowadays is a little bit different, but this is something that you may or may not expect to see during your time as an intern. So back then, I was in the Richmond office, as I mentioned, and I woke up at 7:30 to get ready for work. It was a 12-minute drive, but I carpooled, so we took a little bit of time to sort of get everyone together and go. And that was to the office in Richmond. So I would arrive approximately around 9, usually like 15 to 30 minutes early, actually, because I'd woken up early enough. And then I'll usually just hang around, talk to all my teammates up until 9:30, and then I'd start doing like working time and stand up. So I'd attend morning meetings, including team stand up at 9:30, and then much of the major like coding slash meetings will get done in this sort of time frame up until lunch. And then at 12, I would usually grab lunch with either my team or with other TIP interns, or I would also attend like a lunch and learn if they're offered, usually with free meals also included with those, luckily. And then by 1, I'd be back and getting ready back to work. So it wasn't always just work though. I would meet with my manager or tech lead for 10-10s. I would also participate in like API discussions for the work I was doing at the time. A little bit about the work I was doing was I was working on a team handling chargebacks with MasterCard at the time. I won't get too much into the details, but we were basically working with MasterCard as an external vendor for processing chargebacks through credit cards. Um, Also in the afternoon, I would do random things like they would host random intern events all the time, happy hours. I would message random people to have coffee at meet and greets. This could be like my skip level, which is the manager's manager, or just like random engineers that I'd love to talk to and just like get to know around the office. The Richmond office is also really nice in that there's this like lake and a bike path around, so you can just like take a bike around with some friends if you need to sort of get some light exercise in or to like jog your brain after a couple hours of work. But usually by 5 I'd be done, and then after 5 I would do stuff like cooking, playing video games, or going out with my friends or other TIP interns. Um, but yeah, so at the top right, you might see that all of those people there were interns in 2019 with me, and we had gone to an escape room together and took a commemorative photo. Yeah, I think that generally concludes my day in the life. But if anyone had questions about specific aspects of that, feel free to ask in the Q&A as well. and I will try my best to get back on those.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey and Shira and Tarly, for sharing your experience with Capital One. We do have quite a few questions and a couple of minutes to answer those. Denise, if you want to stop screen sharing, we can just jump right into Q&A. I think first we'll just go to Alex, if you don't mind kicking us off. We have had a lot of questions in the chat around the timeline for application. I know we have an answer that is very specific for analysts, but I can help out with a more general answer. We don't have any other specific dates, but do you mind kicking us off with answering that one?
Yeah, great question. So we are planning on posting the analyst internship and development folks for anybody who happens to be in this meeting interested in that role. We are planning on posting both of those roles on July 8th of this year. And just as a heads up, just for timeline purposes, you're looking at about a month to a month and a half, give or take, on how long some of the assessments take to evaluate and how long it takes some of the candidates to send the evaluations back to us. But you're looking at about a month to a month and a half for a full interview process.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think that like analyst is the only group that has made the call of exactly what date they will be posting. Sometimes the postings do not last very long. So sometimes when the roles are posted, they're only there for a couple of days. The reason for that is because we at Capital One, we know about how many people we need to hire, and we know about how many applications we need to get to that hiring number. In addition to that, we also know that we want to ensure that all of our applicants have a good experience in the application process. And so for all of those reasons, when requisitions are posted, they're often only open for, a certain amount of time, and then they're closed. So it's a good idea to keep that July 8th date in mind. It's also a good idea, if you are interested in our technology roles, to start looking for those postings to be open starting around July, and then leading into the fall. On our website, you can set up a job alert where you can be notified when positions are posted. I will, towards the end of this call, share some links in the chat. It gets a little lost if I do it too early. So I will share some links in the chat where you can learn more about our website and whatnot, and find details about the programs. So yeah. I know each program handles it a little differently. So Alex, I'm actually going to stay on you for the next question. I know each program handles it a little bit differently, but we did have a lot of questions around location and around housing. I know you can answer for the analyst program, but do you have any context at all of the tech program and how they handle, I think they handle location similarly to analyst, but I think housing is a little bit different when it comes to the internships. Do you have any context on that, or do you mind answering at least for the analyst programs?
Yeah, I can totally answer from the analyst contextually for the tech program. I know in years past they have offered housing for candidates. I'm not sure if that is still carrying over into this season. But for the analyst program, so we have 5 total locations that we're looking at. We have 2 with the most limited availability, and just a full caveat here, these 2 locations tend to expire or within the first round of offers that we make, just based on the footprint or demand that we have for analysts in those 2 spots, those being New York and Chicago. The 3 other locations we have with more wide open availability and larger programs footprint availability. You're looking at McLean, Virginia, which is, for those familiar, is essentially Washington, D.C. Great city for commuters that don't drive, because the metro goes directly outside the building. You're also looking at Richmond, Virginia. That's my home base. I know a couple folks mentioned it earlier. Beautiful college campus feel. And then we have Plano, Texas, about a half hour north of Dallas. Our program, while we do not offer any housing directly from us, we do offer funds that can be utilized. They come in the form of a commitment bonus. They are allocated usually about 10 weeks prior to the start of the internship, and allow for you all to utilize those funds however you see fit. But most of my candidates use them for housing and real estate.
Love that. I'm also going to go ahead. We are getting lots of questions that are about specific programs. So I saw a lot of questions about cybersecurity. I saw a couple of questions about analysts, and we'll get to some of those, and a couple of questions about our tech programs, which we'll also get to some of those since we have folks here. But I am going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat. I am going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat here. So the link that I have just dropped, if folks don't mind just pausing on engaging in the chat so that folks can find that before it gets too buried. But the link that I have just dropped is for our upcoming events. If you are interested in, yes, I love that. Thanks, Jade. If you are interested, I'm sorry, I only sent that to hosts and panelists, so Jade sent it to everyone. Thank you so much, Jade. If you are interested in learning more about any of our specific programs, I would recommend clicking that link and looking for a information session surrounding those specific programs. I saw some questions about DA. I know that there's a DA info session coming up. I saw one person who asked about analysts versus finance. There is a finance info session coming up. I know that there's a lot of interest around or in the chat around cybersecurity. I know that they have an info session, so I would definitely look into to there to find a specific info session about the program that you want to learn more about. So here we wanted to offer just sort of an overview of internships, introduce you to some interns, and we can speak specifically to the analyst and to the tech internship programs. But if you're interested in learning about a different one, might be a good idea to register and attend one of our other programs. A second thing that you'll find there in that link that I shared, I'm just going to copy and paste it again because there have been a few more messages. So a second type of event that you'll find there, I saw a few different questions in the Q&A about how to prepare for interviews and what to expect in the interview process. Now, each program is going to manage interviews and the interview process a little bit differently. And so you can learn more about the specific interview process. You can learn more about the specific interview process in those info sessions for each of those programs. But another thing that is a super good idea to get started doing is to start attending case workshops. So the case interview is an important part of many of our interview processes. And so we have a tech case workshop if you're interested in learning more about the tech roles, and then any of our other roles, you would want to attend the business case workshop. So we recommend getting started with those as early as you feel comfortable. It feels like it's speaking a different language sometimes and doing things a little differently than we do in other interviews. So we recommend getting started with those. So those are the two things I wanted to just off the jump, make sure you had a link to. I see that it's still getting buried in the chat a little bit. So, Jade sent it 3 times. So that should be helpful. It should be easy to find the link to our upcoming events. So I wanted to just call that out here. Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, yeah, Claire, I also saw a lot of questions for people that weren't necessarily in a tech degree, but they were looking to personally go in that. I don't know if you wanted to mention CODA.
Yeah. I mean, we do have a really cool program. CODA, I don't know CODA, but like I'm, certainly not a recruiter or an expert on it, but we do have a CODA program, which is a 6-month coding. It's like a coding intensive. I forget, Developer Academy, that's what it's called. So it's it's for folks who are interested in going into our technology roles. They can apply for the CODA program, and then they get sort of that developer training, and then if they're successful in the CODA program and they graduate, they can then transition into our technology development program. That is a great program, but we also know that a lot of folks that are interested in technology interested in technology, but maybe aren't in that major, find a good fit in our analyst program. A lot of times our analysts are working with technology as well, and just doing it in a way that is more like sort of analytical and data driven. And many of our programs don't require a technology career, but since we're so focused on technology at Capital One, you'll find yourself tech adjacent in almost any role at Capital One. Thanks for calling that out, Charlie. Okay, so now let's go back to the Q&A. I think I wanted to just voice over some like generic questions. I have one question that was like kind of a softball, but I really do want to hear the answer. So this one would be for Jeffrey, Charlie, or Shira, any of you that want to answer. Folks were asking about your favorite part about the internship and what sort of made you interested in returning to Capital One and staying with us sort of after. So the thing that you loved the best during your time at Capital One and what sort of what intrigued you with coming back. Jeffrey, I see you're off mute, so I'll pass to you first.
Yeah, so I think one of the major reasons why I really enjoyed the internship was because of the sense of community and belonging that I had as an intern in the corporate housing. I was placed in like an apartment complex basically with I think like a dozen or two other interns. And we kind of like formed our own community there, basically based around our living areas. I know one such apartment building had probably had like 200 interns. I believe Charlie was in that one potentially. Now I didn't have that big of a community, but the community that I did form was pretty tight knit. Not a lot of them did return, but when I did return as a full-time employee, I did find that due to the like pretty large number of college graduates entering the TDP program, it was quite easy to find people I could get along with and just like have fun with around the office. Now, I guess like depending on when you might have joined, the or when people that might have joined, depending on like COVID and like the remote period, it might their experiences might differ. But at least for me, I find that the sort of shared experience of like all the fresh grads coming out and just like bonding over like starting their work has really been like a pretty big driving factor in staying. But I think Shira also has
Love that.
potential answers, so I'll hand it off to Shira now.
Yeah, I think the community is so important. I love that answer, Jeffrey. All right,
Cool.
Shira, sorry to interrupt.
No, all good. I think what differs Capital One from the internship that I had previously and why I ended up staying here versus going back there was also the big sense of a work-life balance. I know that that is something that's really, really big, at least for me. And having that ability is something that definitely sold me to coming here. I think that Capital One really takes pride in ensuring that everybody has that time. We also have like learning days once a month, which are really, really helpful to kind of develop yourself as a candidate and just kind of learn more skills or do whatever you want to do to increase your career. So I think that that's something that's really, really nice. Also, being a bank, you get a little bit more holidays, which is super, super cool. But I think the biggest selling point for me was being able to at 5 being like, no, I'm done. Which is something that's huge because especially being young, I know there's a lot of things that I want to do while I still can. So that's kind of one of the biggest selling points for me. I mean, besides the fact that I made a ton of friends throughout corporate housing and how during the internship, they put you in pods of other interns. So you're around people within your own age. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like a group project at school. You are still working with full-time employees, but it is kind of cool that you have that group of people that you can work with that are more your age and your experience level. So that was definitely also a huge selling point for me.
Yeah. And I love that call out. I mean, it is super unusual to see a meeting with, right now we have 6 Capital One associates on video after 4 o'clock. That's super unusual for Capital One. So I love the call out there that like work-life balance is so important. I think we also have gotten questions in the past revolving around like what the hybrid workplace means for Capital One. So I will just go ahead and expand on that a little bit. We are currently working under a hybrid work model. So what that means is that on Mondays and Fridays, the offices are, I think you can go in, but they're like very, very, very close. It's closed pretty much. Like no one really goes in. But they are considered work from home days. And then on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, the office is open and associates are encouraged to attend. Every team has a little bit of a different routine or a little bit of a different, like a certain couple of days that they try to attend. But we are encouraged to be fully remote on Mondays and Fridays, and then coming into the office on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and or Thursdays, like some combination of those days. So that's what hybrid means for us. We had a question in the chat about sprint work. I think that came up with folks on a couple of your day in lives. Does anyone want to take that one and just explain what sprint work is?
Yeah, I can take that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I kind of was throwing out keywords without realizing. But yeah, so most Capital One tech teams work in Agile. So if for people that don't understand what Agile is, it's basically a way of doing project management for various, projects that they're working on. So you usually split up into something called a program increment. It's called a PI, and a PI is made up of usually 3 sprints, and a sprint is just 2 weeks of work. So usually you would plan during your PI planning, you would plan out your 6 weeks, be like, hey, I kind of have an idea of what we're doing for each sprint, right? And then each sprint will have a sprint planning where you actually dig down and be like, okay, for these 2 weeks, I'm going to work on X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to have that done by the end of the 2 weeks. Then by the end of the 2 weeks, you usually have what's called a retro, which you kind of just work with your tech team and be like, okay, we just did 2 weeks of work. Like, how are we feeling? Like, what happened? Is there anything that we can improve on? Is there anything that we need to be aware of, right? And then depending on the team, you may also do a demo, which is basically like, hey, you worked on something for 2 weeks. We want to show it off now. Like, what do you got? So then you kind of just repeat that process until you finish your project that you're working on. So hopefully that clears up at least kind of the lingo, what I was talking about with sprint work. It's basically just whatever you're currently working on that you got assigned to for that week.
Love that. I think it just sort of also shows a little bit of the way that our work is sometimes project based.
Yeah, and just to touch on it, like each team is that's the cool thing about Capital One. Each team is very much in charge of how they do their agile work. So you'll usually, when you start your internship or when you start your full time, like your team may set up a team norms meeting that kind of goes over like what ceremonies they do, what like how they do sprints, how they do stand up. Each team's a little different, which is nice, because I think some teams are a little more strict, some teams are a little more lax. It really just depends on like the makeup of the team and how experienced they are in agile too, because I know some people don't like it, which is fair.
Yeah, I think throughout Capital One, all of the teams sort of pick and choose the little pieces that work for them.
Exactly. As someone who doesn't really like agile, I definitely pick and choose the thing I like. So that's kind of it. Really, just you work with your team to just figure out what works best for everyone.
Yep. That actually leads us into another really great and common question that we get revolving around internships. Revolving around experience and what type of experience you need for internships. So I will say that again, we understand that we have a diverse audience and interested in a lot of different roles. So what I will say that is really important when you're trying to suss out like what type of experience we're looking for is when you're reading a job description. So when the positions are posted, you will see job descriptions for those roles. When you're reading a job description, you want to make sure that you meet all of the basic qualifications for the role. So the basic qualification means these are the minimum things that you have to have in order to be eligible to apply for the role. So I would make sure that you meet all of those and that your resume shows how you meet all of those. Now, we know that sometimes students have to get a little creative when they're meeting those. And I think, Alex, if you want to help me expand on this a little bit, but is showing that you have that experience doesn't always mean that you've had a job that gave you that experience, because we understand that we're hiring interns and recent college grads. So Alex, can you talk a little bit more about that and like sort of what experience can look like for students that are applying for roles at Capital One?
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize in advance that this is a little bit of a lengthy answer. I just want to make sure I'm giving you the most holistic response. So our interview process itself, there's a lot of skills that you're going to utilize in either the internship or the development program itself, the full-time role. What we try to do, or what we've done, is evaluate candidates. The assessments that we provide are the best way that we've learned to that we can utilize to evaluate our candidates. So while experience in Python, SQL, various tech platforms, softwares, tools, languages is always appreciated because it's going to give you a leg up in performance during the role itself, it's not a requirement. It's not something that we actually assess you on. Really, what we assess you on is the business cases are kind of the bread and butter of our interview process for the business analyst program. What that's going to do is it's going to assess you both quantitatively and qualitatively. So your ability to solve or be in a math-friendly major or math-friendly background, your ability to solve for business problems utilizing your quantitative skills and showcasing your qualitative, your ability to tell that story behind the numbers. So experience-wise, what that looks like. So you might be coming to the table with perhaps you're a social media content creator. And you've definitely had to use numbers to drive business decisions that you've made or content that you're going to make in the future. Maybe you've started a small business and you're doing something similar. Maybe you've worked with another company or another organization, nonprofit, club organization, in order to increase recruitment. That's also a lot of times, a lot of business analytics goes into that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of sell or market yourself on your resume just based on previous experience. But really anything that touches on you using data to help influence or make a decision is going to be what gets you across that line.
Yep. I love that. I love that. I also just wanted to drop in the chat, like, again, we are speaking very generic and trying to be inclusive of as many programs as possible in answering these questions. If you're wanting to learn about a very specific program, we do encourage you to attend an info session. That will be a smaller audience in those events as well, way up to some of our largest audiences. And we thank you all so much for being here and being interested in Capital One. But you will find that some of our other events will have smaller audiences with folks similar to Charlie, Jeffrey, and Shira, as well as Alex, answering questions as well as providing more details specific to those programs in the events link that I shared. We also are continuing to get questions about when the applications will open up and where they can find those details. I have shared a link to CapitalOneCareers.com/students. All of the recs, once they are opened, will be accessible through that site. You can also go in, find the programs you're interested in, and set up a job alert to be notified when those positions are posted. Okay, so we have another question I really want to filter to. I know we only have just a few more minutes. So there was another question. Oh, sorry, I've lost it. So bear with me while I try to scroll back. We're getting so many questions, and thank you all so much for being here and for your questions. I'm trying to pick the ones that can be sort of the most overarching. Oh my gosh, I am really lost in questions here. Oh, okay. Yes. So I had wanted to answer the question about folks had said, and I think we have a really nice pool of former interns here. So someone had asked about how did you all feel that you maybe if either differentiated yourself or used your resume to highlight the experience that you had when you were going through the recruiting process. So were there things that you did, Jeffrey, Charlie, or Shira, on your resume after seeing the job posting to sort of make sure that you were differentiating and showing that experience when you applied? Shira, I see you're off mute if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things you could do to stand out. When you look at the job postings, you'll see kind of what type of things they're looking for. They're not just looking for tech skills, they're also looking for soft skills. So definitely making sure that you show that you can do a lot of soft skills that are needed in a role. You're going to be working with a team. So the biggest thing that I tried to emphasize was my teamwork, projects, anything that I kind of worked with other people while still showing those technical skills. So I think that would be a big thing that will kind of keep you stand out. Again, I'm not a recruiter, so I can't unfortunately tell you exactly what they're looking for, but that's kind of what I did.
I don't think even a recruiter could tell you what to script onto your resume perfectly. But that I think, yeah, I love the call out that like, it's not always just about those things. And like, you can find that experience sometimes in those soft skills. So I once had someone in one of these calls that talked about how they taught a dance class and that didn't seem to translate, but they definitely did use it in interviews and on their resume to highlight one of the skills that Capital One was looking for. So like, I think just keep being mindful that you have a lot of experience. Maybe it's not a one-for-one, but we know that, and that's why we love these roles, because it allows us to offer opportunities for early career folks. We did have a question around the 2-year development program, and I know Jeffrey, Charlie, and Shira, all of you would have started in the internship, which led to an offer for the 2-year program. So I do want to expand on that a little bit more. So at the end of a successful internship, you have an opportunity to apply for and perhaps be hired or receive an offer for our 2-year development programs. The tech program is actually now just 1.5 years, so not even 2 years anymore. So 1.5 years for the tech program, 2 years for all of the other development programs. And those programs will rotate you through 2 roles in your chosen or your program's field. So tech will be 2 roles within tech, and analyst will be 2 roles sort of across the enterprise doing analytical work. Finance would be 2 roles within finance. So the development programs are 2 roles. You rotate through those. At the end of those 2 years, you then are sort of a Capital One associate. You can stay on with the team that you're with in your second rotation, or you can begin looking for another role. Folks who are hired through these programs are very sought after by Capital One hiring managers. And so you should, or feasibly would have no problems if you wanted to continue. I've heard some executives describe their career at Capital One as their own personal development program. So after 2 years, they start trying to figure out what's next for them. And I think that's pretty standard across our culture. So hopefully that answered your question. Did anyone want to expand on that, Alex, Charlie, Jeffrey, Shira, on sort of the full-time program post-internship? Did I miss anything? No? Okay, awesome. So I wanted to make sure we touched on that again. I'll say it again, I've said it a million times, but please look at that upcoming event site. If you're particularly interested in one particular program, please register for one of their info sessions. They're going to talk about those programs, about how the internship, can lead to an offer for the full-time program, but you can also just apply for the full-time program, about what the application process will look like. All of that would be covered in an info session. So we really wanted this event to be sort of an introductory, and hopefully that folks will be interested in diving deeper going forward. I see that we're running up against time right now. So before we go, I do want to give Alex a chance one more time to speak to can you speak a little bit to what grade level can apply for internships when the applications open? And then yeah, and we'll expand on that as well. So helping me to sort of answer those questions as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great one too, because we're seeing a lot of that in the chat as well. So graduation dates that we're looking for, just to kind of bracket those and to give you general rules of thumb. Of course, everything's a little more case by case, but in general, we are looking for the internships. We are looking for a December 2025 grad or a spring 2026 grad. This would allow you to start, or the potential for you to get that full-time offer and start your development role in either February 2025 or respectively August 2025. The next set for our for our development roles, we are looking at a graduation of you would need one academic semester between your internship and the actual graduation date in order for you to be eligible for the development role. That way we have an opportunity to extend that offer for you while you're completing your last semester.
Did I get that right? So folks graduating this December, no, sorry, nope,
It's
I did not get that right. Oh my gosh.
So your internships, you're looking at 2026. Yep. December 2025 or spring 2026.
Right. For an internship. For a full-time role, that would be December 2025 or...
That's where it gets a little tricky. It's really just, you kind of need one more academic semester after you're there, and we go from there.
Okay.
But yeah.
And that's how you get stuck with 2 internships like me, where I had I had my graduation in fall 2020 instead of spring 2020. So because I had an extra semester, I was given another internship before the full time.
Yep.
That's right. We love repeat interns sometimes. That's awesome. Okay, so I hope that this was super helpful. I know that we weren't able to get to all of the questions. I do want to still thank everyone so much for being here and for your interest in Capital One. I also want to call out that we have 4 more events coming up with Capital One. One of them will be similar to this, but focused specifically on folks in the rotational programs, and then others around our diversity topics, and then one specifically about how to prepare for interviews. So we have a few more events coming up with Way Up. Check our Way Up profile to register and attend those. We also did have an event last month that was sort of a more general information session with lots more information than we shared today, generally about all of our programs, but in particular our analyst and tech programs. That was recorded, and we are going to try to make that recording available in the next few weeks or a few days as we work with Way Up to make that available. So that should be on our profile with Way Up. I did share a link in the chat, which is not so high up anymore, to register for other upcoming events, as well as to find our student and grad site to learn more about the programs or register for job alerts. Those have been shared, so please grab those before you jump off. Yeah, and Alex is also calling out, it's never too soon to start attending case workshops. Those can be tricky interviews. So definitely interview workshopping is a good idea. Before we go, I do want to thank Jade at Way Up. Thank you so much for hosting us today. Denise, screen sharing, I say it all the time, but screen sharing I think is the scariest job in this event. So thank you so much for managing that. Alex, thank you for coming and handling questions and Q&A as our recruiter. And then of course, Jeffrey, Sharon, Charlie, thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience as interns with Capital One. We truly feel like the best way to get to know Capital One is to get to know our people. And so thank you for being our people today. And then everyone who attended, one more time, thank you so much for your interest in Capital One and for being here and spending some time with us. We hope you'll continue to get to know us a little bit more, and maybe we'll see a few of you next summer. Bye, everyone.